You're listening to the Baumbastic Podcast with Andrew Ellis on Inside Arkansas.
That new intro is pretty good, huh? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Baumbastic Podcast, presented by Inside Arkansas and hosted by Andrew Ellis. It is a nice Tuesday, January 28th, and we are continuing to inch one step closer each day to the Arkansas Razorback baseball season opener against Washington State. We'll kick off a 4-game series there at Baum-Walker Stadium. We cannot wait, man. We're really excited. I know a lot of you guys are as well. And again, I appreciate everybody for being here. Appreciate everybody for just loving Arkansas Razorback baseball, man. We can't depend on many things in this world and in this life. But the Arkansas Razorback program, you certainly can depend on. And that's what we're going to do. So I look forward to experiencing this whole season-long journey with you guys for however long it lasts, and hopefully it lives up to all of our expectations. But I think that we are all in the same boat in that we just can't wait to find out what happens. It's just a story that we have to see unfold. And again, I appreciate all the excitement that's been shared, not just with this podcast. Obviously, I appreciate you guys for being here and consuming the content, contributing to my livelihood, and appreciate everybody for liking, subscribing, doing all the cool things, podcasts and all that. But really, it just makes me happy to see so many people looking forward to baseball, because I remember a time when I was growing up where not every game was on TV. You know, before the SEC network, it was really hard to find Arkansas Razorback games to watch. And I obviously grew up in Louisiana, so you know, I would maybe get up once a year if I was lucky to go to Baum and watch a game. And so it was kind of tough to consume content with the Arkansas baseball program, and it made it a little bit harder to kind of have this preseason hype, this preseason anticipation. It was just a very different experience. And so it's not lost on me how blessed we are that we're able now to watch most of the games. I mean, almost every single game other than maybe the Flow Sports games are on TV. And you know, it's just good that we can all consume this product together. So, and I also remember a time when preseason leading up to the season, there wasn't a ton of coverage around the baseball team. Obviously, basketball season is always overlapping, always going on. But, there'd be certain guys here and there who might tweet out a thing here or there from the scrimmages, but it really wasn't much. I remember Ryan Folks. I remember him. I used to have to just follow all his tweets and just refresh on his Twitter until he would post updates. And that was like 5 or 6 years ago. Like, there really wasn't a ton of talk around Arkansas baseball leading up to the season. And so, I guess, that's a big part of why I wanted to do what I do, is just kind of to be that. Because when I was a kid, I wished someone would have been doing this. And so I appreciate you guys for all, because I know I'm sure a lot of you are kind of in that same boat. So I appreciate everybody who's been tapped in on this journey, man. And so today's episode is going to be a little bit of a weird one, a little bit of a fun one. I don't want to take it like too seriously. We're going to talk Arkansas starting lineup, which we've talked a good bit about. You know, if everybody's been listening to the show, we're all kind of on the same page, or you at least know my general stance on the lineup. We know who the starting middle infield is going to be: Vahiva, Lloyd Nolan Souza. Third base, Brent Iredale. Didn't have the best weekend of all time this past weekend, but we have no reason to believe there's anyone that's a serious candidate to dethrone him there. Ryder Helfrich, kind of same thing at catcher. Don't really see any case against him there. Charles Davalon, who was banged up this past weekend, and we'll continue to kind of keep our eye on that. Again, I'm okay. I'm glad he was able to come back and hit on Sunday, and so he's clearly not a big picture thing here. So until further notice, I have him as the center fielder. I don't really see any other conversation to have there. And then Kendall Diggs and Logan Maxwell are kind of the X factors. I feel like kind of where they go. Those are two guys. Pepe, you could also throw in this mix as well. Those three guys, or at least two of them, we feel pretty confident are going to be everyday starters, are going to have big roles on this team. But where you put them kind of determines where you put everybody else. I mean, if you're going to have Diggs and Pepe, if they're not able to play the outfield, which, it's still kind of remains to be seen if that's a real option for them. If they're first base DH, that opens a spot for Justin Thomas there in the outfield. I feel pretty confident that Maxwell is going to be at either one of the corner spots or at the very least DH. And I feel pretty confident that Pepe and Diggs are going to be in there. Where does that end up? I guess that's kind of what we're here to talk about and dissect. So what I have prepared here for this show is I've got 4 lineup combinations that are 4 different, not completely different, but changes here and there. There's 2 against right-handed pitching, 2 against left-handed pitching. I referenced this a couple times now, but if anybody that plays the show or just any baseball video game, I guess, from back in the day, that you have you have to set your lineup of right-handed versus a right-handed pitcher with no DH versus a right-handed pitcher with a DH, left-handed pitcher, all that stuff. Obviously, Arkansas is going to have a DH in all of these, so there's not really that. But I did want to kind of be prepared for multiple things. And look, throughout the season, we're going to see way more than 4 different lineup combinations. So I'm not here to proclaim for you, right? Hey, these are the 4 lineups. You better agree with what I say or not. We can continue to debate this and talk about it. And it's always subject to change too. The way I feel about it on January 28th, it differs greatly from what I felt December 28th. And I imagine on February 28th, I will feel a little bit different as well. And so, again, we're going to continue to see this thing evolve. But I basically wanted to do an episode that kind of reassesses where we're at with this Arkansas lineup and where we maybe see it going. I also did list them like in order of like I tried to do it like an actual batting order. I didn't do the cop out where I just do catcher, first base, second base, all of that. Tried to put it in a little bit of an order, taking into account left, right, all these things. That is really not the big thing I want to focus on. I'm not going to sit here and argue of like Nolan Souza's got to hit third or like anything like that. That's not really what I'm trying to do here. Again, all of it's subject to change. And again, I'm not saying I'm like the end all be all here where it's like, I'm 100% right about this. Like, I'm sure you guys are going to have your thoughts on, I'd maybe move that guy up a little bit, or I'd move this guy down. And, we can have those conversations, but I'm really like the big picture. I'm just trying to kind of portray the general sense of where we're at from a position standpoint and just kind of what this thing might look like. Obviously, we got to see the starting lineup, not in its entirety necessarily, because one of Pepe or Diggs was always with the other team there. Same for Kahio Aloy, who might be in that mix as well. So again, it's not a super definitive, but we got to see DVH basically put down a starting lineup, and so we have a general idea of where this thing is headed. The lineup I'm about to show you takes a lot of that into account. Maybe not the exact way that DVH sees it, but DVH, if you're listening, go ahead and get the notebook out. Get the notebook out. I'm doing your job for you here, man. I kid. I'm just throwing a little shot at my pal DVH there. But without further ado, let's jump right into it. And again, I also want to clarify these first 2 lineups are a little bit more serious. The next 2 lineups, I had a little fun with them. I just decided to get kooky here a little bit. But we're gonna start with just the traditional Arkansas versus a right-handed starting pitcher. How I think it would go down if the season started today. So you've got Charles Davalon, who again, I feel pretty confident for you will be a starter in this everyday lineup. Center field seems like the no doubt obvious position there. Left-handed hitter, checks all the boxes as a leadoff guy, center fielder. And this is the Florida Gulf Coast transfer for those not familiar. And there's not much of a huge debate there. At least not in my opinion. Moving on, we got the shortstop, Fayetteville Fly. Very good. Hawaiian, 6'3", 220. You know who I'm talking about. We all good there. You need me to sell you on that one, any. And then now Nolan Souza hit 5th in pretty much all the scrimmages this past weekend. I think it was either 4th or 5th. I have him hitting 3rd. One, because you guys know how I feel about Nolan Souza and how good I think he is. But really, I was trying to stick, like you see, I did a pretty good job of kind of doing the left, right, not loading up guys. And so I really thought about that a little bit. I wanted to have a lefty in that 3rd spot to break up the 2 power hitting righties in Aloy and Iredale. So I could see the case for Kendall Diggs. Logan Maxwell is a guy who I have here 7th. He hit 2 and 3 like all weekend. He was up in that top 3 of the order the entire weekend. So he's obviously a very real candidate to hit right there. And that's how DVH did it this past weekend. Had Maxwell at 3, Souza at 5. I just a personal preference thing. I kind of like Souza there. I would like to get Souza as many at-bats as possible. He's got the power to drive in runs. He's got the speed to kind of do some things. He makes enough contact. He's making a lot more contact. He didn't strike out once this weekend. So I really just think there's a lot you can do there with a guy like that in the 3 spot. And then, of course, you get back to a right-handed swinging third baseman, Brent Iredale. So not really any like hot takes through 4 here. Now, this is where things get a little weird. I've got Kendall Diggs in my DH spot, hitting 5th. And again, we can argue for the order. I'm really not trying to focus hardcore on that. I have him in the DH spot. I just think it makes sense. He DH'd a couple times this weekend, played first 1. We didn't see him play any outfield, which will that change in the future? Maybe. It probably will. And I think, of course, he's going to be an option there, assuming he's back to 100% healthy. But just kind of as of today, that's kind of the vibe I'm getting. And you just look around the other spots in the outfield, I think it kind of makes sense. And so then you have Ryder Helfrich behind the plate there hitting sixth. I feel like that's a good spot for him. Again, maybe 7, maybe 5, maybe move him up to 4 or whatever. But I think that's the general range you're going to see Helfrich in. And Logan Maxwell, a guy who is overqualified, I would say, for the 7th spot in the lineup. And he's another one I could absolutely make the case for moving him up. Maybe you flip him in Diggs. Maybe have Souza at 5, him at 3, kind of like they did this past weekend. But I feel pretty confident that Logan Maxwell, who did not have a great weekend, I wouldn't say, but I feel pretty confident in predicting that he's going to be in the everyday lineup when it's all said and done. And right field is kind of where he was at most of the time this weekend. And then you got the first baseman, Rocco Pepe, who for sure is overqualified for that spot. Again, I'll hear you guys' arguments if you want to move him around or wherever. I just really was kind of trying to do the left, right, left thing. I really like that. You want to avoid the possibility of having, a left-handed reliever come and face 2 or 3 straight, two out of 3 lefties or 3 straight or whatever. And so I tried to space it out as much as I could. So he kind of just was the victim of me spacing out the righties in the lineup. And then Justin Thomas, who has kind of forced his way into this conversation, he would potentially be the starter at left field. And again, there's arguments to be made for other possible combinations and stuff like that. But again, this is just kind of how I see it. And this is pretty much what the lineup was this past weekend, give or take maybe a guy or two here or there. So moving on a little bit, we're going to go to the left-handed versus a lefty. Now, this is where things get weird because obviously left-handed pitcher, you would probably like to avoid having a ton of lefties in the lineup. The way I view it is left-right matters a lot, but I don't think it needs to be like the thing we live and die by. So, for example, Nolan Souza, I'm certainly not going to move him around. I'm definitely not taking him out of the lineup because there's not really an option. The other guys that you would want to start over him at second base, Cam Kojal and Gabe Frazier, both of those guys are left-handed hitters. So there's really not a case to be made for anybody else there. You could maybe move him down if you don't want your third hitter being in a left-on-left matchup. I'm cool with that. Maybe switch him and Helfrich, switch him and Iredale, whatever you want to do. But I think Nolan Souza, regardless of if it's a left-handed or right-handed starter, everyday starter, no doubt about that. And I kind of feel that way about Diggs and Maxwell. Diggs is not a guy. I mean, he hits better against righties. Pretty much everybody, even right-handed hitters, hit better against righties. But his splits historically have not been like that drastic. Like he's a guy that does pretty well against lefties, kind of is good with, switching up his approach, still seeing a ton of pitches, maybe doesn't hit for the same amount of power against lefties, but is not a guy that is just one of those you can't play him against lefties. And Logan Maxwell, similar kind of thing. Might not see a ton of power out of him against lefties, but fully capable of still hitting there and being in the everyday lineup. But I did kind of use the cop out and threw Justin Thomas with both of those spots because you could really make the argument, especially you say you're 2 weeks into the season and maybe Maxwell is 1 for his first 12 against lefties or something like that, and you really haven't liked the way he's looked, or maybe he struggles against lefties with velo or something like that. Just there's all kinds of situations. So Thomas is kind of the asterisk where it's like you can kind of throw him in there. But I the reason why I think the left-handed pitcher thing matters here is because I'm putting my DH spot. I'm putting Kahio Aloy in there. If I'm going to put Kahio Aloy in that lineup as a DH, you need to kind of know you're getting something out of him. I feel like he's more of a candidate to show off some of that next level power that he has against a left-handed pitcher. Whereas if I'm going to have Diggs or Maxwell be a DH, I would rather it be against a right-handed pitcher. And of course, by the way, I mentioned Kendall Diggs. I have him in right field in this lineup. We haven't seen him play outfield yet, so it's not even 100% sure that he's going to be able to do that. If he's not able to play the outfield, I guess you would just take him out of the lineup, or you could throw him at DH, whatever. But that's where you'd have Justin Thomas in there. I'd probably move him down to the 9 spot there. For just a general look at this lineup, I think I kind of like the vibes here. I feel like this kind of makes sense. And again, Pepe is kind of the X factor because they've been playing him. I mean, he played first base in all 3 scrimmages this past weekend. Again, same for him. Maybe he's going to play outfield. I just don't know. We got to see these guys get healthy, and I'd really like to hear from some of the coaching staff and see how kind of they feel about this. Now, these next 2 lineups, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and do another disclaimer before I do this. This is not me like genuinely predicting how it's going to go or like saying this is definitive. These next 2, having a little bit of fun with it. Okay, I'm just kind of just kind of spitballing here, where I just was, I'll even pull it up now. So this lineup I have titled versus a right-handed pitcher that actually sucks against lefties. So this is like this is your kind of full on, if you want to go big time, load up the lefties, which by the way, DVH is known to do here and there. He won't do it long term. I'm not saying that every time Arkansas faces a lefty starter, they're going to, or against a righty starter, they're going to load up with lefties. But they've done that in some certain matchups before. And when you're trying to get guys maybe a day off here or there, I think there's some interesting possibilities here. So we've got Davalon still at the leadoff spot against a right-handed pitcher who can't get lefties out. Vahiva Aloy would definitely fall into that category of, it doesn't matter if the dude is a left-handed, right-handed starter, or a switch thrower. If he's ambidextrous, you're going to have Vahiva in your lineup playing shortstop. Nolan Souza, you of course feel pretty good about him. Iredale's another guy. Him and Helfrich are, Iredale, Aloy, and Helfrich are the three righties I'm keeping in this lineup. I feel like those guys are starters no matter if Randy Johnson's on the mound or whoever. Like you're going to keep those guys in despite being right-handed hitters. I don't know why I use Randy Johnson because he's left-handed. So we'll go Max Scherzer. It doesn't matter if it's Max Scherzer. You're going to keep those righties in. So then you got Kendall Diggs there at your DH spot. Logan Maxwell playing outfield. Brenton Clark playing right field. The left-handed hitting freshman who I like a lot, has had a really, really productive offseason. He's really kind of forced his way into this conversation. I think you'll see him get some spot starts here and there, more so on midweeks. But I do think that I don't think you should be surprised at all if you see him get a start opening weekend in the outfield, whether that's center or right field. He's certainly made a case to be in that mix. And then at first base, you can kind of take your pick. Neither of these guys, Reese Robinette or Cam Kozel, played first base this past weekend. Reese Robinette, big country, he's only played first base a handful of times. Did it a little bit in his first offseason on campus, but he's played most of his time at third base. Got to start at first base in the fall exhibition series. So we'll see if they end up kind of exploring that option a little bit. And Cam Kozel's another guy that we haven't seen him play first base, but he's a really good defender. He would kind of fit the criteria of someone, Arkansas's had a lot of converted first basemen. He would kind of fit that Trevor Ezell type of mold of a guy that's kind of overqualified defensively. But I think in this particular lineup, if you're getting weird, you throw a lefty in there. So a right-handed pitcher that sucks against lefties, this would be a lot of them that Arkansas could throw out there. This was just kind of a fun lineup. But again, I think it's kind of something that Arkansas has in their back pocket. And then this other lineup I have, this is the left-handed pitcher who can't get righties out. So now we're really getting weird. I've got Davalon out of the lineup entirely just because he is a left-handed hitter. I tried to get three right-handed hitting outfielders. So you see Pepe there at the top, Kahio Aloy in right field, which may seem weird, may seem like a typo. He played outfield this past weekend. He did not play first base once this past weekend, which I think is very interesting. It kind of says to me he's still a candidate to be in the everyday lineup, could still be a bat that they use a lot, but he played right field, and I didn't think he looked that bad out there. I didn't see a ton of balls hit his way. It's not like he was having to cover a ton of ground or everything, but he's got a pretty good arm, got a really good arm, actually. So right field kind of makes sense. If he can kind of handle the ins and outs of the maneuvering, catch and fly balls, like I think he's a guy that they would throw out there. Again, is he going to be your everyday starting right fielder? Probably not. At least definitely not to start the season. But I think it's a position that he could probably learn on the fly a little bit. And I think this is just a lineup where you're getting weird here. I've got Michael Anderson in there at first base, the power hitting Rhode Island transfer who had a really productive weekend. I would say kind of reintroduced himself in this conversation at first base there. Still don't know if he's going to be able to unseat whether it's, Rocco Pepe or even Kahio Aloy if he ends up going back to first base. But I think Michael Anderson is a guy that Arkansas certainly would feel pretty comfortable starting on the weekends. And now the weird part here is I got Zane Becker there catching. He's a right-handed hitting catcher. And I have Ryder Helfrich at DH. The reason I did that is because that's something that I think is going to happen. Almost certainly. I would maybe even go as far as to bet my life that one of the lineups during opening weekend, that 4-game series, will feature Zane Becker at catcher. And there's a decent chance it's going to feature Ryder Helfrich at DH because he's a bat that you want to keep in the lineup, but getting him off his feet, getting him off his knees, I guess, is really the way to go there. And so you've got the three right-handed hitting outfielders. with Justin Thomas moving over to center field. He played some center field this past weekend, and throughout the fall, pretty much spent the entire fall as the, they need two center fielders for these scrimmages. He pretty much played center field most of the fall. So it's a spot that, like, clearly they think he can handle. He's a really good athlete. He can definitely cover the ground. And so, will this be an exact lineup you'll see in the regular season? I don't know. I don't know if I'd go that far as to say that. But again, maybe DVH is in here taking notes. So just a little bit of fun there. Again, I'm not trying to genuinely forecast the lineup and say, hey, this is it. Let's call it a day. There's still a couple weeks left of scrimmages, and there's going to be a lot that changes throughout the season, whether it's injuries, guys get hot, guys get cold, like whatever. We'll see how it is. It's always subject to change, and maybe this is something we'll continue to do throughout the season, just to kind of pick and choose how we feel about this lineup. But in these four lineups, I feel like I kind of tried to cover my tracks as well as I could, to where, like, no matter what happens with this Arkansas lineup, I've kind of got something prepped for it. The only thing I guess I didn't have, which now that I'm really thinking about it, probably should have probably had a lineup that had Kahio Aloy in there at first base. But, again, if I'm doing the loading up with righties thing, you just got to get both him and Anderson in there, both right-handed hitting power guys. But I do think Kahio Aloy, if you see him at first base, I don't think that would be like the most stunning development ever. But I feel like, for the most part, anybody that you could make a case for starting in this Arkansas lineup. Another guy I didn't throw in there was Gabe Frazier. If you really wanted to commit to the, well, I get, yeah, if you really wanted to commit against a right-handed pitcher, you would take Vahiva Aloy out and have Gabe Frazier play shortstop. So maybe that's let me pull that one back up. Maybe this is what you do. You just bump maybe that shortstop spot down a couple spots. You throw Gabe Frazier in there. That would give you 7 left-handed hitters in there. Hell, maybe you throw Big Country over at third base. Hell, now I'm realizing that I got a few different options I could have gone with. Could have had Kojal at first, Big Country at third base, but I tried to keep it somewhat realistic. But if you really wanted to get weird, you could actually find a way to have 8 left-handed hitters in there. Let me pull that back up here one more time. Arkansas does not have a left-handed hitting catcher. I cannot. That's the one thing I cannot do for you guys. Cannot produce a left-handed hitting catcher for the Arkansas Razorbacks. But again, this was a little bit of just a fun exercise, and we're going to continue to do some more stuff like this on the Baumbastic Podcast. But that's kind of where I see the starting lineup for the most part, mainly on those first 2 lineups that I showed that are a little bit more realistic. Let me pull those back up just for those. Just get one quick little look at it before we close out the show here. That's kind of your against right-handed hitting lineup there. Pause if you need to. And then there's your projected lineup, I guess, against left-handed hitters. It's always kind of tough because lefties are just weird in general. Left-handed pitchers, some aren't as good against lefties as you would think, and so you never know what kind of arms you're facing and what they're going to want to do. But again, I kind of like, just a peek behind the curtain, I did want to kind of cover my bases, make sure that I've got every possible lineup that you could see with this Arkansas baseball team. It's going to come from something out of these 4 looks here. And so hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I've got to urge you guys one more time. Make sure you give this particular show a thumbs up. That really helps us with the algorithm, helps YouTube, helps expand our reach and all that. Share with your friends and family, do all that. Do what you got to do. Help us promote this show the best you can. And again, for a lot of you that this is probably not the best day to say this, because this was a very visual podcast. So I hope the people that are listening on the podcast didn't get too far behind here. But make sure you're subscribed on Apple, Spotify, wherever it is you get your podcasts. God, now I'm kind of panicking. I'm worried that I didn't portray it properly for the audio listeners. So real quick before I get out of here, I'm just gonna speed through it. Against right-handed hitters, I have Davalon, Aloy, Souza, Iredale, Diggs, Helfrich, Maxwell, Pepe, Thomas. Did you get all that? Against lefties, I've got Davalon, Aloy, Souza, Helfrich. Nope. Souza, Iredale, Helfrich, Diggs / Thomas, Pepe, Kahio Aloy, Maxwell / Thomas. That's where I'm at for all you audio listeners. I'm tapped in. I've got y'all. I've got y'all's back. Don't worry. But again, make sure you're subscribed wherever you need to be subscribed. Subscribe to the Inside Arkansas YouTube channel if you're not already. And I say that a lot, but like seriously, every single day we've got minimum 3 banger pieces of content going out, and a lot of times more than that. We're about to be heading to Lexington, Kentucky, where we're going to have a lot of Arkansas basketball coverage. One more, I guess it's going to be like our swan song, because if Arkansas loses this game to Kentucky, then it's probably the writing's on the wall. This team ain't going to be playing deep into March. But again, we cover it all, man. We've done football. We got through a really productive football season. I feel like we covered it as well as you could. I mean, we just every day we were on the show tapping in with the football team, covered the transfer portal, live reactions to pretty much everything that went down there. Curtis is the best in the business when it comes to basketball. You know, I also cover baseball. Maybe I do it well, who knows? But well, I feel like we've got a nice little mix there at Inside Arkansas of all the content going out. We've got you covered no matter what no matter what your thing is, man. And so make sure you're tapped in and subscribe to that YouTube channel. In my humble, objective opinion, it's the best way to stay up to date on all things Razorback, no matter the sport, no matter the season. So appreciate everybody for being here, and we will be back with more episodes throughout the week. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Baumbastic Podcast. Have a great day.